Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sim Racing Online for round 5 of the GT Legends, the AC GT Legends Championship. A fantastic series which has provided us with so much action up until this point. As always, please do let me know if you can hear me okay. There's only so much that I can do to make sure that you can hear me before I start broadcasting, so that confirmation has to come from you guys. But I very much hope you can hear me because we have a lot of racing to go. A lot of racing in store for you today. And it is only right that we have this broadcast set up before we get going. The track that we're at today is known as the Feldbergring, or the Feldbergrennen. We're about 2,800 meters, 2,800 feet above sea level. So that's about 870 meters above sea level. On a mountain course around the Großer Feldberg region of Germany. That of course means Great Field Mountain. It's one of the tallest mountains in the surrounding area, and this is a real-life racetrack that was used, well, obviously it's a closed-off public road course, but it was used back in the 1930s all the way up to the 1950s, actually from the 1920s all the way up to the 1950s, eventually being halted due to the difficulty marshalling it and putting on events, and of course the infamous Le Mans disaster, which caused so many classic racetracks to unfortunately be lost to time. We're currently in qualifying. We have a 15-minute qualifying session. The trouble is, it's going to take them over 4 minutes to actually get around and start a lap, so it's going to be a little while before we actually see them setting their qualifying times. They're just out there now getting around to the start. And hello to Roman Labro, who says, hey, everything is okay. Thank you very much, Roman. Not the first time this season that you've told me that everything is okay, that you've let me know that, so I really do appreciate it. Yeah, if you're wondering how long this course is, because I've already said it's going to take them over 4 minutes to get around to the start of the lap. It is precisely 11.6 kilometers, which is 7¼ miles. It's about the halfway point between the length of Spa-Francorchamps and the Nürburgring Nordschleife. So, not the absolute longest circuit you'd have ever seen, but definitely on the longer end, and it certainly gives the vibes of a classic race circuit, which is exactly what it is. This track hosted the German Motorcycle Championship, hosted various Formula 3 events, hosted various hill climb events as well. And the lap record is still held by a BMW motorbike, I believe, in 1953. Georg Meyer riding that thing. Of course, Georg quite successful on both 4 and 2 wheels, so I wouldn't be too surprised to find out it was actually a BMW car that he set that lap on, but I believe it was a motorbike. So we're watching Julian Paus, who luckily has been able to make it to this event. Unfortunately, he had to miss the last one due to a power outage, and unfortunately that cost him the championship lead. Let's run you through how the championship stands. Maddie Shepherd is leading it as a result of that last race, as Julian Paus begins a flying lap, and I tell you what, flying is the right word for it, as he absolutely rockets over that crest. Let's ride on board with Julian Paus as I'm talking about the championship implications. So Maddie Shepherd has gone back to the championship lead by 23 points. She can technically wrap up the championship today, but probably won't. Nothing to do with Maddie herself, it's just that the way that this championship works, you get quite a few points, basically just for starting the race and completing one lap. There are more points on offer than there are positions in the race. And so, if you start the race, you will score points, no matter if you complete the race or not. As for what she would actually have to do to win the championship, she would need to win the race with Matheus Estrella lower than 7th position, and Tony Talviti also failing to score particularly well. That is unlikely. We will deal with the implications of anything that happens as it goes along. there are technically still 11 drivers in championship contention, although today we will probably whittle that down to about 3 or 4. So I'm expecting a good few drivers still to be in mathematical contention going into the last round in 2 weeks' time. The last round being at a circuit known as the Kleine Nordschleife. Now, whether that means it's a short version of the Nordschleife, or whether that means it's effectively the full Nordschleife but shrunken down, remains to be seen. I actually do not know why it specifies that we are going to the Kleine Nordschleife, but that's what it says on the website, so I will wait 2 weeks and then we will explore that together for the championship finale. But yes, Maddie Shepherd leads the championship, Matthias Estrella is second position, Tony Talviti is third. He's the only driver to have won 2 races in this season, but unfortunately had to miss a race earlier on this year, had to miss Bremgarten, and that's really affected him in the championship. I think he would absolutely be leading it if he had made every round. Julian Paus is 4th in the championship, although as I've already explained, he himself had to miss a round, had to miss the last race due to a power outage. Kirill Kirilov is 5th in the championship, then it's John van der Geest, Michal Mazurek, Paul Upham, Phil Brown and Stefan Lagodin, the top 10. Laurent Lons should also be in that top 10 list, although he elected to change cars partway through the season and as a result forfeited all of the points that he had gained up until that point in time. Now, one of the toughest things about commentating this race is going to be figuring out where we actually are on the track, because it's such a long circuit and so many of the corners look so similar that I'm going to do my best, but I have to admit I don't know the circuit well enough for this to be entirely accurate. To determine when we're heading towards the finish line, there's a tight left-hand hairpin at some point. Where that actually is, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think we've reached it yet. I reckon, judging by the track map that I've got in front of me, or is this the hairpin here? As you see, Paus locking up on the right. That might just be the hairpin that I was looking for, known as Hegerweiser. So it should just be a straight, not quite straight of course, but it should be a relatively straight sprint to the finish now to complete the lap that we were just on. And then we'll see what the time to beat is in this session for Julian Paus in the very powerful Bizzarini 5300 GT. As we've seen already this season, the Bizzarini, one of the most successful and most popular cars, and you can absolutely see why with the amount of power that this thing has. Up to the line, well, he's got a little chicane first, but up to the line he goes, and Paus's lap is... should be coming up any second now, and I don't know why it didn't appear to be registering that. I'm sure he just did a full lap, didn't he? Unless it was invalidated for some reason. But there you go, Kirill Kirilov up to the line. Lap time also not being registered. That's interesting. It seems to have registered their out laps, interestingly. Let me just double check quickly on the schedule. Yeah, so those look like... No, that looks like a representative lap time there from Julian Paus, the 4:14.9. Because that was very similar to what was being set in practice just now. So I'm not sure why that hasn't come up on my timing tower. A little bit worried about that, but I guess we will wait and see. Let me just check it's on overall setting. Right, there we go. Alright, well, we'll just have to wait for a lap time to show up. Still a few people in the pits by the look of it. Here's Maddie Shepherd, championship leader, coming up to the line to start a flying lap of her own. They do still have enough time for at least 2 more flying laps now. So it's not a huge disaster if the laps that they've just been on didn't count. The trouble, of course, is that with such a long course, there's always a chance of you having an accident while you're out there, and if you have an accident now, there is genuinely a chance you won't get time to get a lap in. So that would be a big problem. Okay. So, just a reminder of how the championship's gone so far. The first round of the championship at Rem was won by Maddie Shepherd. The Corvette was extremely strong at Rem, as it has a very high speed, has a lot of power. This is the most powerful car in the field with its 7-litre Chevrolet V8 engine. That is a huge engine for those who know. But unfortunately for the Corvette drivers, there was a little bit of an update to the mod after that race, and they haven't seemed to be particularly competitive since then. We've also been to some quite tight and twisty circuits since then, and the Corvettes did not do particularly well there either. Bannock Bray was the real breakthrough for Tony Talviti, who had struggled at Rem, and Talviti absolutely dominated Bannock Bray with a Leicester flag victory. Then at Bremgarten, unfortunately, he was not able to attend, he being Tony Talviti. He had something else come up, and as a result of that, Kirill Kirillov was able to win the race in his Ferrari 275 GTB Competizioni, which we will see in due time. Then we went to Clermont-Ferrand, and Kirillov struck back, taking another victory, becoming the first driver to win 2 races this season. And that brings us up to where we are now, round 5 at the Feldbergring. Let's take a look at some of the cars in the field. I always like to run you through all of the different cars in this beautiful AC GT Legends mod, just to show you what's actually out there in racing. Obviously you've got the Chevrolet Corvette, as driven by Maddie Shepherd, the 1967 Chevrolet Corvette. Phil Brown has an AC Cobra, specifically an AC Cobra hardtop 427. Absolutely stunning machine, a fusion of American and British engineering with a massive Ford V8 in the front, and this car looks like a heck of a lot of fun to drive. Definitely one of the cars that I would have considered if I was going to be racing in this championship. Here we have another Bizzarini. This is Jari Laakkonen. Here we have a Porsche 9046, driven by Philip Pichler, the only 9046 remaining in the championship, although there were a couple in the first round of the season. This is the smallest and lightest car in the field, with the smallest engine size as well, as we do now start to see some times appearing on the leaderboard, with the time to beat currently being Tony Talviti's 4:13.304, and that is faster than anyone went in practice, so expect that to be a very, very representative lap time. With that being said though, Paus is within a second, and at the last round at Clermont-Ferrand, getting within a second of Tony Talviti was not easy, and I'm not sure that anyone did it in that qualifying session. Paus is currently second, Kirillov currently third. Also out there we have a couple of Alfa Romeo 33 Corsa Stradales, Kimi Martikainen racing one of them. This is the car that really struggled at Rem, and then came into its own from round 2 onwards, and Martikainen had a heck of a time. Oh, and he's having a crash. Okay, well that lap unfortunately is not going to be particularly competitive, and I'm not sure he's going to have much time to set another lap in this session, because he's got to get back to the grid. I don't know if he's going to get there before the checkered flag, so 6th might be the absolute best that Kimi Martikainen can hope for in this one, but there you go. Julian Paus, we've already seen him, his Bizzarini. Kirill Kirillov here has a Ferrari 275 GTB. I've mentioned a statistic a couple of times so far this year of Ferraris from this era being sold for about $50 million US dollars. Specifically, that would have been a Ferrari 250 GTO, and apparently that is still the 3rd most expensive car ever sold. The 250s are also a car that you could drive in this mod, although the slightly more up-to-date 275 GTB should be the more competitive package, which is why Kirill Kirillov has been driving it, and he used it to his advantage at Bremgarten to win that particular race. The checkered flag is now out to await the drivers as they come up to the line, so this is their last chance to set these flying laps. Here's John van der Geest. He has another Alfa Romeo 33 Corsa Stradale. Michal Mazurek has another Corvette. And then we're back to Maddie Shepherd. Haven't seen Tony Talviti yet, the current leader. and he pulls off to the side of the road, so Talviti will not be improving. Since we're coming to the end of the qualifying session, let's watch some of the drivers who could contend for this pole position. Julian Paus is one of them. I'm expecting Maddie Shepherd to improve on her time as well, although qualifying has not been her strong point in the last couple of rounds of the championship, especially after the Corvette had its unfortunate update. Or the mod had its update, and the Corvette was unfortunately badly affected. Philip Pichler sets his first lap of the session. Unfortunately, it's a long way off. May well have been accident affected. Same can be said for Michal Mazurek, who is now showing up with a red name on the screen, or was. And keep an eye out for that in the race, because as we've seen already this season, when my overlay shows one of these names in red, that usually means that the driver has had a shunt, and it's a good thing to look out for in case the driver starts dropping down the order, because that can show you the reason why. Out of the hairpin comes Julian Paus, so we know that he's in the last stretch of the lap, and it's hard to tell exactly how good his qualifying lap will be. We haven't really seen any splits or anything like that. There is a bit of damage on the front of the car, so there is a chance that he's been into the wall. Whether that's been on his out lap or on this actual lap, I am unsure. Of course, these cars are pretty tanky. They can survive some pretty hard hits. And I'm not sure this is going to be an improvement for Paus, because he's only got a couple of seconds left, and unfortunately for Julian, that is time up in the session, so he will not improve on his lap, and he comes back into the pits. Maybe just continued the lap to get a little bit more practice before the start of the race on what is a very tricky track to handle. Kirill Kirillov up to the line now. Does he improve? Across the line? Not sure. I think it's going to be a slight improvement, and he goes up to third. So Kirillov goes third and then smashes into the fence right at the end, and that may well be the end of the qualifying session. Lakinen's still out there. Of course, the trouble with this being such a long lap. Let's take a look at Maddie Shepherd actually, see if she has anything else to give. But yeah, the trouble with it being a long lap is that even when the timer ticks to 0, you may still have to wait a good 4 minutes or so for everyone to complete their laps and for the full grid to be confirmed. But here's Maddie Shepherd in the Corvette. We'll ride on board with her as she comes up to the line. Well, a few little sweepers first, but she will approach the line very shortly. The time to beat is a 4:19.802. And of course, if she can beat Martikainen's time at least, then she will start to move up the order. Out of the final corner comes Shepherd. It's a long way off pole, I'm afraid. The Corvette's still struggling. Up to the line, and she's down. Oh no, she does improve on her time, but she's down on Martikainen. So that is 8th place at best for Maddie Shepherd. Not the qualifying session that she would have hoped for, especially in a round where she could technically seal the championship. But really, this is not to be treated as a championship decider, considering how unlikely that sequence of events would be. This looks fast from Lakinen. Up to the line. 4:15 maybe? Yes, and Lakinen goes third. Good lap right at the death there. Lakinen improves and goes over a second faster than Kirillov, so snatches that away. And unless there's someone out there who is not yet showing on our leaderboard, then that should be the end of the session. So Tony Talviti takes pole position by 0.8 of a second, which sounds like a lot, but on a track this long, that's actually not as much as he would have been hoping for. It's certainly not as much as he sealed the pole position by at Clermont-Ferrand last time out, or Bannock-Bray in round 2. But yeah, good pole position nonetheless from Tony Talviti. He should still absolutely be the favourite for the win. Julian Paus second, then Jari Lakinen, Kirill Kirillov, Matthias Estrella, John van der Geest, Kimi Martikainen, Maddie Shepherd, Phil Brown, Paul Upham, Michal Mazurek and Philip Pichler. The 12 cars who set laps in that qualifying session. Let's go to this screen here and see if there's anyone else on the server. Mariusz Lebioda is on the server, and yet did not go out in qualifying. There is still a chance that he can start the race, because if you're online then you can take part. and all of these other names you'll have to ignore are drivers who were signed up for the series and who have raced in the series earlier on, but are not here today. Including, strangely, Laurent Lons, who had made every round of the championship up until this point. Congrats up front, says Kirill Kirilov. Yes, indeed, this is a tricky car to get the hang of, tricky car mod to get the hang of, and of course a very tricky circuit. The real difficulty with a circuit this long is just memorizing the thing. Drivers like to have the circuit kind of programmed into their muscle memory, so you can just kind of crack on and do whatever you're doing. But when you have a circuit this long, it can be pretty difficult to actually put it in your muscle memory, and you get fewer practice laps in general, and fewer qualifying laps, and of course the race won't have that many laps in it in the grand scheme of things. And so it is going to be pretty difficult, but there you go. So here you see the grid one last time. Tony Talviti on pole position, followed by Julian Paus, Jari Lakkinen, Kirill Kirilov, Matthias Estrella, John van der Geest, Kimi Martikainen, Maddie Shepherd, only 8th for the championship leader, then Phil Brown, Paul Upham, Michal Mazurek, Philip Pichler, and potentially Mariusz Lebioda at the back. Ignore Caitlin Penny, that is me. The commentator has to have a camera car, which will be removed from the grid as soon as the race begins. Here's our leading car then, Tony Talviti. Let's see if I can get a better camera view for him. Nope, that's me. There we go. Tony Talviti, the race leader, who will take us away from the line. When the lights go out, the race doesn't begin immediately. There is a partial formation lap, and it is only on the exit of turn 1 that the leader is able to put the power down and the race officially begins. So here goes Tony Talviti through the first corner, and about now I think he will put the power down. Nope, not yet. The race director would have given him some instructions as to when he can put the power down and start the race, but as soon as we see drivers begin to push and go side by side, then we will know that the race has officially begun. But it will be Tony Talviti leading us away, and Julian Paus will be trying to use all of the horsepower from that extremely strong Bizzarini to challenge for first position. Out of the village we go. I'll try to get the name of that village as well. But it looks as if the race has begun now. That looked like a good place to start the race, because you've got through the trickiest section, and now you can really start to stretch the legs of the car. A little bit of grass kicked up there for Julian Paus, but he keeps it out of the wall, and it looks like we've had 13 cars starting the race, with Lebioda starting from the pit lane at the back. So Talviti leads, followed by Paus and Lakkinen, then Kirilov and Estella. And it's relatively single file further back, with no serious moves for position being made just yet. But give it a chance, because we still are not even halfway through the first lap yet. And I think Lebioda's had enough. Lebioda spins at the back and drops even further behind the pack than he already was. Side by side a little further up, we've got Van der Geest and Martikainen fighting over 6th position. And then Maddie Shepherd getting involved and going through to 7th in her Corvette. The Corvette goes through up the hill, puts Martikainen down into 8th place. Martikainen taking a look, coming back at Maddie Shepherd. Martikainen a very good overtaker, as we saw last time out at Clermont-Ferrand. The only thing that really kept him from a good result in that last race was that he kept having incidents. It's been a really action-packed series so far, with incidents galore, I'm afraid to say. And that's really... Ooh, as Kirilov gets it all wrong, all crossed up there, and goes up over a grass bank, but gathers it up before hitting anything. And that's the important thing. So Kirill Kirilov continues on in the race. But yeah, the real defining factor in these races so far has been who can get the car to the finish in one piece, and who goes bouncing off the scenery more than the others. Maddie Shepherd trying to line up Van der Geest, but this is a section where the Alfa Romeo should be quicker. This is a tighter little section of the course, and it's really the latter part of the course, after the left-hand hairpin, where the Corvettes and the Bizzarinis of the field will start to have their advantage. In the past, of course, we've seen Porsche 911s, we've seen Jaguar E-Types as well. And unfortunately, those are no longer present in this this field, but even so, a rather diverse, beautiful selection of cars. A little bit wide there from Shepard, but that might just have been her line. It looks as if Mazurek was running wide there. I think Mazurek may have got into a little bit of strife, because Philip Pekler has now gone through into 11th position. Tony Talviti already extending his lead at the... Oh my goodness, and that's a huge lockup from Julian Paus. We saw him doing that in qualifying as well. But he gets through the hairpin in one piece. And that is the hairpin that I was talking about, which will take you back up towards the end of the circuit. The driver's running a little wide in the background, but getting it turned in time. And this is the long straight where the Bizzarinis and the Corvettes will come into their own. And just as I say that, Mazurek gets back up into 11th position past Pekler, using the straight line speed of that Corvette. So coming towards the end of the first lap, Tony Talviti will lead the race by about 3 seconds. That's an excellent first lap from the Alfa Romeo driver. And this may well be another one of those days where we don't see much of him at all. It's funny though, as he was going onto that straight, he only led by about 4 seconds, and then by the end of the straighter section, his lead was down to about 2.3. It shows you just what an advantage the Bizzarinis have over him, and also the Corvettes, because Maddie Shepard is challenging John Van der Geest into turn 1. Van der Geest gets on the grass, and Shepard does go through into 6th position now. A decent opening lap from Shepard, still not exactly what she would have wanted, but it certainly could have been worse. Down through the village now. Yeah, let me get my Google Chrome up, see if I can work out what village this is in Germany. Should be Oberreifenberg. That's a very German-sounding name there, Oberreifenberg. And then we head on to another little village here at Niederreifenberg. Unfortunately, no real corner names on this circuit though. Just a few little villages that you can use as landmarks, a bit like the old Spa-Francorchamps. That looked a bit wide from John Van der Geest there. And Kimi Martikainen gets a good run on him on the exit of the corner, and Martikainen should go through to 7th here, because he's got the run, and they're in the same car too, so it's not like Van der Geest has a horsepower advantage or anything like that. Van der Geest does keep it on the inside though. Good defensive driving from John Van der Geest, and that's what you got to do, as Martikainen looks all over the back of him for a potential retaliation maneuver. This is the fight to be watching for the time being, I'd say. It's a little bit of a shame how quickly the leaders all separated out, with Talviti getting 4 seconds away from Julian Paus, and Paus himself getting 2 seconds away from Jari Lakkinen, but that happens sometimes. They did seem to have an advantage in qualifying. The top 5, I believe, are still in the order that they qualified in. It's just 6th and back that have been chopping and changing in these positions. But it's a long race, 53 minutes still to go, 1 hour in total. So a lot can still change, and mark my words, there will be incidents. That, I believe, the tyre marks there were probably from Mariusz Lebioda's spin, as he had a little bit of a chaotic first lap. Here comes Martikainen now, challenging once again on John Van der Geest. Gets a lovely slingshot effect there, and uses some slipstream from the back of the Corvette. You don't get much slipstream in these cars, but that was one way that you can use it. So Martikainen back into 7th place now. It's almost like a cycling race though, where they're in a little pack amongst themselves, and it doesn't really matter who's in front at any given time, because they could very easily swap back again in just a few corners' time. That was very wide from Van der Geest. Ooh, and he's lost a lot of time there, rubbing up against the fence. The camera didn't really want to follow him, but yeah, he's lost 2 or 3 seconds to Martikainen there. Phil Brown's now within a second of him. That's the thing with this track. it's almost like a rally, really, where you kind of have to treat every lap as a point-to-point on a track you're not too familiar with. I very much doubt that any of these drivers have ever raced the Feldbergring before, at least not against real-life opposition. Some of them may have done single-player races against AIs or whatever, but this is almost undoubtedly the first online race that all of these drivers will have done. Feldbergring, not exactly a common circuit to be selected for sim racing leagues. Then again, that's the beauty of championships like this, as Van der Geest is really under pressure now from Brown's Cobra. But yeah, that's the beauty of championships like this, like sim racing online. It does take you to places that you just would not consider for the most part. And I've certainly driven a lot of circuits myself with sim racing online that I've never raced in any other sim racing organisations, leagues. Funny though, Phil Brown had a lot of pace over the Alpha at the start of the straight, but by the end of the straight he was being caught by Paul Upham's Ferrari. And Shepard's off. Shepard in the wall. Rejoins P8, P9, P10. Disaster for the championship leader, who will struggle to hold on to the top 10 at this rate. I would say that that's a rare mistake for Maddie Shepard, but pretty much everyone in this league has made mistakes this season. It's just one of those championships where it's so difficult to keep the car on the straight and narrow. So let's watch Shepard for a little bit, see if she can make a recovery drive. She's got Upham and Brown just up ahead of her. Two drivers who passed her as she was rejoining from that little shunt in Oberreifenberg. Tries to line up Upham's Ferrari, and that's a move. And that looks relatively successful to me. I know we've only just left the corner, but yeah, she's got the run, and Shepard does go back through into 9th position. Brown tried to keep his nose on the inside, just as Van der Geest did to Martikainen in the same place a lap ago, but was just about unable to. Let's do a little bit of onboard riding with Maddie Shepard now, as she attempts to catch back up to Phil Brown. Once again, the steering seems very straight. It always seems that whenever there's an incident in this championship, the cars don't appear to be particularly badly affected unless you really clobber something. I think the only times we've really seen drivers having to escape back to the pits has been when they've literally been ejected from the confines of the circuit, or had a flip or something along those lines, which we have seen a couple of times, especially at Clermont-Ferrand. And then of course John Van der Geest, I think, had a big crash at Rem where he got crowded into a pit building. Even then the cars held up surprisingly well, which is a good thing, because it means drivers can continue on no matter what's happened to them in these races. And yeah, it eschews a little bit of realism, but at the end of the day, we're all just here to have fun. John Van der Geest now side by side once again with Kimi Martikainen. Oh, and he hits the wall again. Oh, and they both are in the fence now. That's the same corner where John Van der Geest hit the fence a lap ago, and he's going to let him through. So Van der Geest very sportingly knows that he severely hampered Kimi Martikainen and lets him back through into 6th position. And of course he would. John Van der Geest, the series admin, is not here to race unfairly, and yeah, that's what we like to see. What you're technically supposed to do when you cause a collision in Sim Racing Online is give yourself a drive-through penalty. However, if it's just a little shunt like that, and you can very quickly and easily give the place back, then you don't really need to do that. The drive-through penalty rule only really applies in, say, if you're in a single-seater race and you cause serious damage to another car by knocking their wing off or something like that. Or if someone drops too far back and you can't give the place back, you can elect to give yourself a drive-through to avoid any potential post-race penalties. Interesting to see that the top three were all very close in terms of their lap times that last time around. It was the fastest laps of the race so far, but they were all in the 4-minute 15s, and the low to mid 4-minute 15s at that. Tony Talviti the quickest on a 4:15.2, and then Paus I think was a 4:15.3, and Lackinen a 4:15.5, but that's surprisingly close for how long this track is, and how quickly Talviti began to build a gap at the start of the race. You wonder if they're just pacing themselves a little bit at the front of the field, which wouldn't be the worst thing to do, to be honest, considering how easy it would be to make a mistake. And as I say that, I think Lackinen ran a little bit wide there, and I think Paus potentially made a mistake earlier on in this lap, because Lackinen is visibly closer to him than he was before. And again, I think Lackinen's mistake that we just saw him make has rather brought them back together again in the other direction. Let's take a look at Michal Mazurek, why don't we? Since the field has spread out just a little bit for the time being. I'm sure there are some battles that will kick off again, and I'll catch them when they do. But one thing we haven't really been able to do much of this season is just watch drivers lapping as they are. Unfortunately, at some of the other rounds of the championship, the only time I've seen some drivers has been when they've been in the middle of an accident. So I kind of feel like I've been neglecting drivers like Michal Mazurek a little bit, who are strong drivers just out there doing their own thing. Mazurek, I think, a little bit more competitive on R-Factor 2 than he is on Assetto Corsa, at least from my own experience. But even so, some pretty firm car control on display here. Beautiful red Corvette, nicknamed the Corvette Stingray, with that very distinctive rear bodywork shape, designed after or designed to resemble a boat, kind of the rear keel of a boat. Up the hill you see Paul Upham's Ferrari just up the road. Upham, who did a lot better at Bremgarten a couple of rounds ago, until having an incident of his own. Must have been quite amazing to be a spectator here back in the day, but then again, oh, and that looked like a little mistake from Upham. Yeah, then again, I can't really imagine going to an event and spectating when you kind of have to wait 4 or 5 minutes to see the cars come past. People always complain, even in Formula 1 races, that you don't see enough of the track, and that's modern F1, where, you know, the laps are less than 2 minutes long, and you see the cars for a good 2 or 3 corners every lap, depending on where you're sitting. But here, it's about the same, but you have to wait, you know, 4.5 minutes for the cars to come past you again. Just kind of feels like you get fewer laps for your money, but, you know. Then again, I'm not sure if everyone even had to... if you even had to pay to attend this event. It's probably so long they couldn't really police admission. You could probably just turn up, stand by the side of the track and watch what was going on. Tony Talviti with another fastest lap of the race. You'll see that quite a lot over the course of the day. That just tends to be a thing that he does, as we saw last time out. Great sounding cars too. I love the detail that's been put into this car mod, where it's not just that the cars look different drive differently. They also sound audibly different. And there are plenty more cars that are available in this mod that were never actually used in this series, just because they wouldn't be competitive. Cars like the Lotus Elan and the Austin Healey. But if you downloaded this mod yourself, which I recommend you do if you have Assetto Corsa and you use Assetto Corsa, then you can absolutely have your own go in any one of these cars. Looks like there's a little bit of a scrap forming between Brown and Shepherd. They've fought a couple of times in this race already. Although the eventual overtake where Brown got ahead of Shepherd happened when Shepherd was having a bit of an accident in the village. Shepherd now trying to line up Phil Brown's Cobra. Can't really imagine seeing bikes racing here either, because I mean, it was dangerous enough back in the day, 1953, but you can imagine just how sketchy it would have been with the trees lining the circuit and the fences and things. Of course, anyone who sees the Ulster GP or the Isle of Man TT or whatever will know about bike road racing and how there are still people crazy enough to do this kind of thing. But the Feldbergring eventually went out of style because of the safety concerns and the lack of demand for it, really. It's quite easy to imagine how something like this could very much have survived into the modern day and added to the calendar of motorbike road racing. Whether or not that would have been a good thing is up for you to decide. Maddie Shepherd, I think, will be a little bit disappointed with how this race has gone so far. She will undoubtedly remind us that the Corvette is not what it was back at the first round of the championship. But even so, she's been able to eke out a few strong performances that maybe the car shouldn't really have been capable of. Like last time out, where she was only about the 7th or 8th quickest car in terms of lap times, but ended up second through pure consistency, pure determination. And where's she gone? Sorry, I was looking down there. Oh, and Upham's been involved too. Oh no! They've come together again! So it looks as if Shepherd lost it, right as I was looking down, as tends to always be the case. I think Shepherd lost it by herself and Upham went into her. Well, Feldbergring strikes again. Let me see if I can... I'm just looking back on the YouTube stream to see if I can pick up the exact moment where it happened. It's funny because she seemed to be completely under control heading through the S's, where we saw Van der Geest bouncing off the fence earlier. But then just kind of disappeared, so something happened. Obviously on the exit of the corner. Another fastest lap for Tony Talviti, by the way, as will continue to be the case. As Phil Brown comes up to the line, let's find someone else to watch for a little bit, shall we? Matthias Estrella. Very much on his own in the Bizzarini, but then again, pretty much everyone is by themselves as it is. It really is a little bit of a time trial race now. I remember one race a good few years ago. I can't remember what championship it was. It may have been one of the old GP Legends races that we did, where a few cars retired earlier on and we ended up with only about maybe 6 or 7 cars left in the race, and they were all completely separate from each other, and on the surface it looked quite boring, but it was actually pretty entertaining to see them battling over fastest lap, because in that particular championship I think fastest lap was worth a point, and they were all kind of trying to snag it off each other, and there were a couple of different drivers who could have done it. And it was that race, I mean, the fact that race is stuck in my memory it's always a reminder that whatever's happening on track and whatever's not happening on track, in terms of races that may appear a little bit boring from an outsider's point of view, that may appear a bit spread out, there's always something to talk about, some kind of storyline or something to watch. In this particular race, I would say just enjoy the view of the wonderful 1960s GT cars, mid-1960s GT cars, lapping a classic circuit, as they maybe would have done back in the day. Of course, these exact cars would not have raced on this exact circuit, because the Feldbergring had already closed up by the time these cars were made, but there were still other road course races in existence back then. You know, Le Mans was much more of a road course star race back then, as so was the Nürburgring, so was Spa-Francorchamps, of course. There were plenty of sports car races at Spa-Francorchamps, which went through villages, and they were kind of a point to point just like this, through Bernaville and Stavelot and Malmedy. Nowadays those towns still exist, of course, but they're only really remembered because of the corners named after them on the modern Spa-Francorchamps circuit. I like the way they still contain braking boards, braking markers. I'm not sure how many of those would have been on the actual circuit, because it's quite hard with some of these corners to pinpoint where the apex of the turn actually is. I kind of think of braking markers as being something that was brought in a bit later, or at least only introduced on permanent race circuits. Oh, I think Paul Upham's just had another little off, but he continues on his merry way. I think Estrella's slightly reeled in Kirill Kirillov on this lap. Just a little bit though, just a couple of seconds. They're not too far from the start-finish line, so we'll see the lap times as they cross the line. When the times come up in purple, that means the drivers set a personal best lap time. That's always fun to see, because it shows you who's pushing. When it comes up in red, that doesn't necessarily mean they were really slow, it just means that it wasn't their own personal best. They might not be pushing as much as they were at another point in the race. And you tend to see the fastest laps of the race actually being set quite late on. And I was right, Estrella was reeling in Kirillov by nearly 2 seconds on that lap, with a personal best as well. Good going. But yeah, it's very much a case that you'll see the fastest laps of this race quite late on, because the tyres don't really tend to wear that much, and the fuel is the main difference. When it gets lighter, the cars are obviously a little bit more nimble than they otherwise would be. Was that a little bit of bonnet damage on Julian Paus's car? You do get the picture of this mod. It likes cosmetic damage, but it looks as if the bonnet is ever so slightly pinched upwards there. Maybe he's had a little tap off the wall. You can still see Tony Talviti up the road. 9 seconds is the gap, but it's still a visual gap, at least on the straights. Julian Paus, who I remember was being cheered on in the YouTube chat enthusiastically at the second round of the championship, and you got the impression that the full Julian Paus fan club was here. But unfortunately, Paus's chances of winning the championship were rather stymied last time out with that power cut. Even so, you do have the feeling that he's going to be competitive right until the end. Rather seems to depend today on if something happens to Tony Talviti as to whether Paus will have a chance of winning the race or not, but stranger things have happened. Bitterini, of course, probably the most obscure manufacturer in this race. What was the guy's name? It was like Giampaolo or Giotto Bitterini? Yes, Giotto Bitterini, who apparently only died in 2023, so quite recently. May 13th, 2023, so just under 2 years ago. And the Bitterini 5300 GT, which you're seeing here, was the first car made under Bitterini's own name. He had made cars with Ferrari and worked on the 250 GTO, but this is the first car that he produced under his own name. Apparently also worked for other makers including ISO, Lamborghini and Alfa Romeo, and several concept cars in the 2000s bear his name. That's directly from Wikipedia there. But yes, I determined in a recent race that the Bitterini company's rights have been bought, I believe, and there are talks of a brand new Bitterini in the works, so keep your eyes out for that, I guess. Yeah, in 2020 the rights to the Bitterini name were acquired by Pegasus Brands. The reborn company announced plans to revive the marque with new models that acknowledge Giotto Bitterini's racing and design heritage. I do like that they're keeping the name Bitterini in mind. It's not just a money-chasing venture where they've gone, yeah, it's a Bitterini, remember us? They're actually honouring Giotto Bitterini as they do it. Whoa, that was a little bit squirrely there. And Shepard and Mazurek are side by side in the Corvettes. Here's Maddie Shepard making a manoeuvre, making a place back on her fellow Corvette driver. Nearly rubbing door handles down the straight. And does go through. Good move from Maddie Shepard there. Quite long, drawn-out move, but she got it done in the end. And through she went. So 9th position now. I wonder if the slingshot effect of that car would have given her a quicker lap. Not quite, but 3 seconds quicker than Mazurek. But she now has about 13 seconds to gain to catch Phil Brown up ahead, which may be difficult, to say the least, considering how strong Phil Brown has been in this race so far. No real mistakes I've seen from him just yet. Hasn't quite had the pace, but 12 seconds is a long, long way to catch. Looks as if Shepard is getting away from Mazurek though, not really. I don't really think Mazurek has much of a chance of coming back at him. Let's take a look at Phil Pickler in the only Porsche in the race. We'll ride on board for a bit. You can just imagine how expensive this race would actually be to run in real life nowadays. They do, of course, still run classic GT cars at places like Goodwood. And they do race them. Of course, the Monterey Classic and the Silverstone Classic and things like that. But certainly don't cause as much damage as we've had over the course of the day already and over the course of the season. I bought a new car earlier today, Nissan Micra. Something tells me you'd need to fork out a little bit more than I did if you were going to get one of these things. Ooh, oh, that's bad. That's very bad. Oh my goodness. Oh, where's he gone? Oh my goodness. Well, Pickler unfortunately back to the pits. and that will cost him at least a lap, because you have to restart the lap you were on if you've escaped back to the pit lane. Oh, that's unfortunate. I think he'll probably end up last as a result of that. We have to wait and see where Mariusz Lebioda was and is. Lebioda, who's still in this race despite a slow start. I get the picture he hasn't done any practice for this race, but good on him for plugging on and doing his thing. But yeah, unfortunate incident there for Philip Pichler. Should only cost him one place, but a heck of a lot of time. Mally Shepherd not getting away from Mazurek maybe as much as I expected. There still could be a battle on here. Flying up the hill. Mariusz Lebioda has got past Phil Pichler, so 12th position now for the driver who started right at the back. He may be about a minute and a half off the back of Paul Upham, but it doesn't matter because it's where you finish. Only 7 laps completed, which is amazing since we're over halfway through the race, but that shows you just how long this course is. Tony Talviti with yet another fastest lap of the race. But I'm going to watch Kirill Kirilov for a little bit, because he is now within a second of Jari Lakkinen for 3rd position. And we haven't seen a battle for the podium places at all today, so this would be quite something to see if it kicked off. Not a great lap from Julian Paus that time around either, so the top 3, well, sorry, 2nd, 3rd and 4th maybe accordioning in just a little bit. You see Mateus Estrella in the background as well. Down into the village. What was the village called again? Let me look that up. I should remember these things. I'm trying to learn German right now, but Oberreifenberg, that's it. And then heading down towards Niederreifenberg. The other village I've got on my track map is of course Hegeweiss, which I mentioned earlier on. That's where the hairpin points to late on in the lap. And this track of course goes around the mountain peak of Große Feldberg itself. Great Field Mountain. I've actually been up a mountain in Germany, Mount Dragonsfeld, which was many years ago. Wasn't really that much of a mountain. When I say I've been up a mountain, I'm not talking climbing equipment and oxygen tanks or whatever. There was a paved road all the way up, and a relatively long walk, but you know, you could easily get a car up it. There's a lovely castle at the top as well that you can explore, so there's something there waiting for you if you do make the trek. I would recommend visiting Germany. It is a lovely country. Been there twice personally. This particular circuit is in the Hesse region of Germany. That's in mid-western Germany. Just maybe 40-50 miles to the east of Cologne. Cologne, incidentally, is where I've been in Germany. 10 out of 10. Would go again, and probably will. I wonder how close this circuit is to the Nordschleife. I'm not actually aware of where the Nordschleife is. Specifically, that is. Obviously, I know it's in Germany. I'll look that up too, why don't I? It's not really... There's not really anything pressing going on track right now. Although I am keeping half an eye on this battle between Lakkinen and Kirilov, because they are still in close contention. And this could still change, especially with a mistake from Lakkinen. And I'm going to switch my full attention to this now, because Kirilov's got a really good run through the right-hander. Takes a little look, just a little one. Up the hill again. Lackinen, who also seems to have a little bit of bodywork damage. Now braking into the hairpin. Lakkinen's running wide. He's locked up. Kirilov will go to the inside. And Kirilov gets the place. Now the trouble for him is that they're on a really fast section. They're onto what is effectively a several kilometre long straight. With a few little twists in it. And this is where the Bizzarini should shine. But Kirilov has got through into third. And that's the first change that we've seen in the podium positions all day long, at least since qualifying. Tony Talviti, another fastest lap, 4:13.5, which is about the same as what he had before, but obviously ever so slightly quicker. His lead over Julian Paus now 17 seconds, that's unbelievable. Still not quite as unbelievable as the lead he was building out last time. Down the hill, look at Lackinen taking another look, goes to the right-hand side and goes back through into third position. Oh, and overshoots it. Oh, and he's taken off Kirilov. They've both come together. Kirilov spins around, there's smoke everywhere, and through will go Matthias Estrella into third position. Lackinen goes back through into fourth, and that was very unfortunate stuff there. It looked as if it was clearly Lackinen's fault. Just getting it wrong into turn one, overshooting it while making the manoeuvre and bouncing off the wall straight into the side of the Ferrari. As Lebioda's had another off, I'm afraid, so Philip Pichler is back up into 12th position. And Matthias Estrella will be thinking, well, where did that come from? I didn't have a chance at the podium a minute ago. And now he's 3 seconds up the road in third place. It's the biggest incident we've seen in terms of race implications so far. And hopefully we don't see things like that being repeated too much. Okay. Shouldn't be too much damage. As I keep saying, these cars are basically like tanks. They don't really get battered and bruised that much, even if there is a lot of cosmetic damage. But you still can't really afford to be doing that. You lose a lot of time, and there is still, of course, the potential that you will damage your car in a more substantial way. So we're 2/3 of the way into the race now. Talviti continues to lead. His gap is 18 seconds over Julian Paus, a huge lead. And then there's another big gap back to Matthias Estrella in third position. Then Jari Lackinen and Kirill Kirilov, the battle that we're watching now. Although Lackinen's starting to get away a little bit on this lap. We'll continue to watch them for a bit just to see if it comes back together again. Kimi Maitikainen is 6th, then it's John Van der Geest, Phil Brown and Maddie Shepherd, who could theoretically have won the championship today, but absolutely will not at this rate. It's Michal Mazurek, Paul Upham, Philip Pichler and Mariusz Lebioda. Just to finish my little train of thought earlier about how close this track is to the Nürburgring. The Nürburgring is to the west of Cologne, and this track is to the east of Cologne. So, not exactly the same part of Germany, but you know, if someone was bang splat in the middle, you could definitely consider them both your local circuit. It's a little bit rough over the grass there from Kirilov, but you can tell he's under control. Good stuff as they continue on their way. Less than 18 minutes to go in the race now. The top two have remained completely unchanged the whole way through. Third place and back have had a little bit of scrapping. And there, talking of scrapping, are the two Alfa Romeos once again. Or two of the Alfa Romeos, excluding Tony Talviti. But John Van der Geest is ahead of Kimi Maitikainen. These two came together earlier on, and Van der Geest very sportingly allowed Maitikainen back through, but now he's gone for the move and has got it. Maitikainen's going to run a little wide, gets over the grass, they both lock up. Maitikainen will duck to the inside. but will struggle to put the power down as he gets the car sideways. And they run side by side up the hill and over the crest, and Van der Gies gets it. Now, can Martikainen slipstream him back again? The low, sleek design of these cars will lend itself to slipstreaming. I mentioned earlier slipstream doesn't really affect these cars much, but I was talking mainly about the big old brick-looking things. These little things are a little more aerodynamic. Martikainen does get a bit of a slingshot. Ooh, rubs against the fence. Good save. Across the line to end that particular lap. Oh, and they're not separated by much at all. Martikainen still taking a look. Does well not to run into the back of Van der Gies as they get on the brakes. There aren't many braking zones on this track, so when you approach one, you've got to be ready for it. He takes another little look. Down the hill, through Oberreifenberg. Not really an overtaking opportunity, because even though you get a double apex left-hander here, it's a little too narrow on the entry. And you'd really have to shove your way past someone to make a move into there. Now I want to work out in a little bit, when it starts to calm down again, what the championship implications are from this. Because obviously Maddie Shepherd's not scoring particularly well, as Pichler has unfortunately spun, so Lebioda is back through into 12th place. But yeah, it does of course mean that the championship lead is in strife. Let me see if I can get up the number of points that each individual driver will get for these positions. So, how many points they say separated them earlier? 23 points. Maddie Shepherd for 9th place would gain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. She would gain 20 points. And Estrella, who is second in the championship, would gain 33. So that's a 13-point swing, sorry. He would be 10 points behind. Talviti, on the other hand, would gain 40, and Talviti was behind Shepherd by 30. So Talviti would actually... Wait, no, sorry, I'm getting confused here, because Talviti would not gain 40 on Shepherd. He would gain... How much did I literally just say Shepherd would gain? 20. So I think... By my reckoning, Paus and Talviti would be equal on points, potentially, behind Shepherd. Okay, that would set us up for a good finale, wouldn't it? Less than a quarter of an hour left in this particular race now. Yeah, 20 points for 9th place, so Talviti would gain 20 points on Shepherd, so it would be 10 points behind. Paus heading for 2nd. And that's worth 36 points, and he was 35 points behind. And Kirilov goes for a move up the inside of Lackinen. Ooh, and they touch a little bit on the exit of the corner. I think Lackinen should have the ability down the straight now to pull away a little bit. I'm just glad they didn't end up going for a spin. Another fastest lap now for Tony Talviti. That is unbelievable stuff. Really, really good. Okay, just to finish my point. So Talviti would be 10 points back from Shepherd. Paus, I believe, is going to gain 36 points and then lose 20 to Shepherd, so 16. So Paus would be 16 points back, and then Estrella, currently 3rd. It's 33 points. Shepherd, of course, gets 20. They were separated by 23. So, yeah. So, Shepard would still lead the championship like this. Talviti and Estrella would be joint second, 10 points behind. And then Paus would be third, I think 16 points behind. If I've got that right. But I am also trying to commentate a race at the same time. I'm a little bit distracted, so I'm hoping that I have actually got that right. Now I know it might sound like a lot, 10 points, but considering Talviti is currently gaining 20 points over Shepard if they finish like this, with Talviti scoring 40 and Shepard scoring 20, that's really nothing. And the championship is absolutely still up for grabs between Shepard, Talviti, Paus and Estrella, I would say. There may still be some other drivers in mathematical contention after this round, but realistically I think it's between those four. Especially if that result stays steady today. Now, as I expected, Lackinen did pull away on the start-finish straight, away from Kirilov, but Kirilov has the rest of the lap to gain back up to Lackinen. If he can get ahead of him before that hairpin, and then pull out a gap of maybe a second, maybe 2 seconds, that might just be enough to hold Lackinen off on the run from the hairpin to the start-finish straight. Definitely a tough ask though, especially since it's much easier to overtake someone in a straight line than in the corners. Talking of corners, Martikainen, you saw a lot of body roll on the Alfa Romeo there. Surprising amount. These things basically just like buggies with extra bodywork. But Martikainen is right on the tail of Van der Geest. Yet again, this has really been the scrap of the race in terms of just how enthusiastically they've been battling each other. I do hope there are no hard feelings after that collision earlier on, but you know, John Van der Geest doesn't tend to hold grudges. I don't know Kimi Martikainen quite so well, but I expect he probably doesn't either. And they should be okay. Talviti's probably going to have to lap Mariusz Lebioda soon. Already lapped Philip Pichler. And once again, it just shows you how good those particular drivers have been, like Tony Talviti, that he's got enough of a gap to lap people on a track that's over 4 minutes long, about 4¼ minutes long. He'll be pretty glad that it's not a really busy circuit, that he's not having to lap people all of the time, but even so, he'll be rather surprised, I imagine, to come across other cars at all today. Lebioda, though, is picking up his own pace a little bit. Just set his own personal best lap of the race, albeit still about 15 seconds off the pace of Tony Talviti. Into the braking zone, look at Martikainen up the inside, locks up the wheels, don't go into John. John tries to line him up, get the switch back. He should get a better run off the corner, but Martikainen's through to 6th for now. A good move from Martikainen, albeit not one that the tyres or brakes will particularly like. Van der Geest lines him up, and they're side by side down the straight. Martikainen the darker looking one, Van der Geest in the green. Traditional Alfa Romeo green car. Oh, they bang wheels. Oh, and into the wall goes Martikainen. And he bounces off the fence. Once again, not the first time in this race those two have come together. This time John does not wait for him. It looks as if it was just generic wheel-to-wheel contact. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, as some people would say. Looking back at the YouTube stream, it's quite an interesting one because you wouldn't have thought they would come together like that, but I guess the paths just converged, and then the way that physics did its thing resulted in Martikainen coming off way worse. A very fast accident as well, so that's got to have got the heart rate up. Very unfortunate. Van der Geest gets on with his own race. Might as well get a little bit of onboard now. We always like to see a bit of onboard in these cars. A driver's eye perspective of what it's like to race these classics. And this could very much be you. If you have the mod, you can always enter the last race of the year at the Kleine Nordschleife. You don't have to do a full season here in Sim Racing Online. You can just enter individual races. So if you did want to give it a go, you can still get out there on the track. And of course, if you don't have the mod, you can just get the mod. That is something that you can do. It is available for anyone to use. And even if you don't want to compete with us, of course, you can always just download the mod for your own personal use and use it in single player as you would. Looks like a fun track to drive as well. As I've said so many times today, very tricky, but it's tracks like this that are so satisfying when you get them right. It's a rally driver's dream, I'll give you that. Through the wooden fences, nearly literally through the fence, goes John van der Geest. Kirillov and Lackinen aren't too far apart. Up the road, 4th and 5th positions. We might see them in a little bit if that starts to get a bit closer. But we'll continue to enjoy this onboard from John van der Geest for now. Fast little dipper, left-hand dipper, then over a crest to the right. Just wooden slats for fences. Nothing civilized or modern like Tech Pro barriers or even tyre walls. Even arm coat wasn't really a thing back then. It's very easy for us to look back at these days and, you know, be well and truly under the spell of our rose-tinted glasses, like, wow, those were the days. But you also got to remember, racing is the way it is today for a good reason, because it's simply not acceptable for people to die in the name of sport, and unfortunately that did happen quite a lot back in those days. Even then, they knew that something was wrong. That's why so many races were cancelled in the wake of the Le Mans disaster in '55. And we should all be very thankful that racing does not look like this anymore, except of course in sim racing, because the beauty of sim racing allows us to contest races like this without putting our lives or the lives of others at risk. And that's why races like this are so special. Grandstands on either side there. That's interesting. And then up towards the start-finish line. Now, depending on where the leader is here, Van der Geest will either have just 1 or 2 more laps to go. The timer is running out. Matthias Estrella continues to run in 3rd. The car I believe he's about to catch is not a race for position. I think he's about to catch either Lebioda or Pickler. Or both of them by the look of it. Lebioda and Pickler having a fight. But hopefully they give way to Estrella. They don't technically have to, but they should know they're not really in the same race here. Yeah, that's Lebioda and Pickler fighting over 12th position in this race there. It is worth some points. And of course, the great thing about Sim Racing Online is that no matter what your ability is, you can usually find someone else to have a little race with. Even in the case of Philip Pickler, who's literally had a big old crash today and had to escape back to the pits, has managed to find Mariusz Lebioda to have a race with. And through goes Matthias Estrella, nice and quickly. going to be a little harder to pass Lebioda though, considering the superior strength of the Corvette. We may be on the last lap now. I'm not sure when Talviti actually started the lap, but I'll try to keep an eye on the lap times. Oh, that was not good there, and Estrella's going to go round. Oh, and Pickler runs into the back of Lebioda as well. Oh, that was a bit of a kerfuffle. I'm not sure Lebioda really saw Estrella coming there, but also Estrella could have gone through cleanly, I think. Just needed to give a little bit more room. I think there was just a miscommunication between the two of them there. As I always say, it's the responsibility of the faster driver to go through cleanly, but it does very much depend on the slower driver being cooperative, making sure they don't get too much in the way. Now this could influence the race for fourth here, because Lackinen and Kirilov are separated by about half a second, and they are now also going to have to pass Lebioda and Pickler, and we've seen already that can cause some issues. So let's hope they do this relatively quickly and cleanly here. Lebioda's run a little wide, that'll give Lackinen a chance to go through, and they both go through. Okay, so that's Lackinen cleared. Just Pickler to go now, but Pickler, we saw with Estrella, moved out of the way a bit quicker. It's a little bit more cooperative. It's very wide for Kirilov. Did well not to put his wheels fully in the grass. We're going to catch the Porsche on the exit. Lackinen looks as if he was a little balked there. But this place, as I've said before, is Bizzarini Central. Talviti has just started the last lap, by the way. He could have backed off and made this lap that we're watching now the last lap, but clearly decided that he wanted to go for another one, and why not, I guess? You're here to have fun. I just hope that everyone put enough fuel in the car, because we're going to have to go for an extra 4 minutes. Because, of course, when the timer ticks to 0, the race doesn't end then and there. It just means that the leader is now on their final lap, but Talviti had only just started it, so he's now got to do a whole other lap just to get to the end of this one. And it looks as if this fight for fourth should be relatively settled for at least a little way longer into this lap. Down the hill, through the village, over the curb goes Kirilov. Oh, and he hits the wall. That might well just end the fight for fourth there, unless Lackinen makes a big mistake on this last lap. Alright. Well, we've barely seen Tony Talviti today. He's been a victim of his own success, pulling away into the distance. Let's ride on board with him. He's got maybe 2 minutes of the lap to go. Maybe 2 and a bit. So let's just enjoy these last few miles on board with the... Never mind, what's happened here? Oh, Shepard's got Brown. Happened very suddenly though. Brown lost 20-something seconds on that lap. Is he out of fuel? He's stopping. That's a shame. Phil Brown stops by the side of the road. I reckon he might have run out of fuel here. I did say that they're going to be pushing it fine, because obviously not a lot of these people would have been expecting to do 4 extra minutes at the end of this one. So Shepard goes through to 8th place, Mazurek goes through to 9th. That means that Shepard will have slightly more of a gap in the championship standings than she already would have done. By about 3 points, I think. So I think she should lead the championship by 13 points. I'm going to quickly double check that as well, because we've got enough of the lap left to be doing little calculations like this. It's worth 2 more points, so I believe she will lead the championship by 12 points over Estrella and Talviti, who will be joint second. And then of course Paus will also still be in contention. I think technically John van der Geest will keep himself in contention as well, but actually he might not. I'm afraid Phil Brown is a DNF. He's going to be the only driver at this rate not to finish the race, hopefully the only driver not to finish the race anyway, and unfortunately has lost a top 10 as a result of that, and I do believe he probably ran out of fuel there, having calculated the fuel it would take to get to the 60-minute mark, but not to the actual end of the race. We're back on board with Tony Talviti, who looks set to win this race with, as I said before, just a few miles to go now. Not too far until the hairpin, I believe, the left-hand hairpin. It's coming up very shortly. And it'll just be a little run up to the line from there. I wonder how he feels after a race like this. Oh, he's already been through the hairpin. So this is the end now for Tony Talviti. Another dominant race. And it's 3 victories from 4 for the Alfa Romeo 33 Corsa Stradale and Tony Talviti. Fantastic stuff and well deserved, and he kills some spectators for the fun of it. There we go. Julian Paus will be second, having been second since the start of the race. And that reminds me, it's going to be another Grand Chelem for Tony Talviti as well, because I don't see anyone beating his fastest lap. Grand Chelem, of course, means you led every single lap of the race, took fastest lap and pole position, and then won. Julian Paus is second. Good drive from him. Very good indeed. It takes a lot to even be in the remote vicinity of Tony Talviti. Mattias Estrella will be third in another Bitterini. Good drive from Estrella to benefit from Lackinen and Kirilov's collision. Lackinen comes fourth. Kirilov will come home in fifth. Just wasn't able to match the straight line speed of the Bitterini. John van der Geest will be sixth, and I'm not sure whether or not he keeps himself in technical championship contention. He was 52 points behind Shepherd, so no, I don't think he does, I'm afraid. So that means there will be 4 drivers, by my calculation, in with a mathematical shot of the championship at the next round. But Van der Geest is 6th. Here's Kimi Martikainen, who will be 7th. And all over the grass, but you can do that. There we go. Oh, rubs up against a wall across the line. I wonder if he was just showing off there or something. And here is Maddie Shepherd, who maintains the championship lead, but not by much. Really not a very competitive day for Maddie Shepherd. But it will all come down to the next race at the Kleine Nordschleife. Shepherd across the line in 8th. Michal Mazurek will be P9. And don't panic about Lebioda having disconnected from the server. He is already finished, albeit a lap down. Mazurek is P9. And the last driver we will wait for to finish on the lead lap will be Paul Upham in P10, as Pichler and Lebioda have already finished in P11 and P12, which is why Pichler has also disconnected from the server. The only DNF in the end was Phil Brown, and I'm sure we will find out soon that he ran out of fuel. Across the line goes Upham. Good job to finish in the top 10, and that is your lot. So Talviti, Paus, Estrella, big crash. Lackinen, Kirilov, Van der Geest, Martikainen, Shepherd, Mazurek and Upham is your top 10. Pichler and Lebioda round out your finishes, and Brown was very unlucky. He made it the full time, he made it 60 minutes, but did not make it the full distance. So that's your lot then. Thank you all very much for joining and for watching along today, whether you're watching on replay or you were watching live. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time for a 4-way championship decider at the Kleine Nordschleife. It's going to be exciting, and I will see you then. Goodbye.